That and all right, welcome everyone. We were waiting for Diamond Anvil to show up in the chat, and now that he's here, we can get started. Welcome everyone to the United Adventure Company presents Delta Green Impossible Landscapes. So glad that you all could be here with us tonight. For some reason, everything is going wonky with OBS, but we'll get there eventually. Um, what is happening tonight? Nathan, where did we leave off? And what are we doing? I'm very lost and confused.
There is no stream, by the way. It's still the 0 counter.
Not on my side, it's not.
Okay.
Looking all right.
Well, then why is it stuck for me?
Refresh your page.
That's 0 on mine too.
There it is.
There it goes.
It's called the stream delay.
Wow.
It's not that much of a delay, is it?
Mine was showing fine. Shouldn't be
Weird.
that much of a delay. I don't know. Where are you? Well, you're in Ithiel, obviously. And you did some honest to goodness exploring around last time.
And we got a belt-fed machine gun with a tripod and people to operate it.
Yeah.
And ammo cans.
A bunch of like homeless sewer people, right?
Yeah, we got a bunch of sewer rats. We're about to take them over to the factory. And we're going to get past the factory to get to the pier.
Exactly so.
That's right.
Yep, you had found some paints that made some very interesting pictures. Ursine had found a very nice amulet in it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else wild other than the fact that there's a giant palace that hovers in the background, always just so close yet so far away. You feel you must get to it. And we will rejoin the 4 agents in the rubble outside the tractor factory. You can see that this whole area is littered with barricades, tanks, and hundreds upon hundreds of corpses. Dead, obviously, by gunfire, explosion. You see some that looks like they just stabbed each other. And looking through it, it is piles of uniforms. It is tough to tell who killed who and whatever. It's a mess. As you're huddled behind some of this, you can still hear the artillery shells tearing up the ground every so often. Gunfire, machine gun fire, popping off. It's nonstop. But you can see the building that this is kind of surrounding, a large L-shaped building that you know is the tractor factory. You also know that from what they've said, yeah, exactly. So you know that this is the way through to the pier, and the palace is through this factory. So what are you guys doing?
Well, we had come through the sewers, correct? I'm assuming we're still in the sewers. We have not exited the sewers yet.
Sure. Yeah, that's fine. You could
Just-
pop your head up and look and pop back
Yeah.
down easily. Yeah.
I imagine they got like a gutter that the drain, drains off. Okay. So with the number of people that we have with us, we have
Yes.
enough to set up like a machine gun nest that can be used to provide covering fire feasibly.
Yeah. That
Um,
seems feasible.
Okay.
So, real quick question.
Mhm.
Is this factory, do we have to physically go through this factory, or can you otherwise move around, skirt around the edge of the building and use
doesn't-
alleyways?
Yeah, it's a good question. It does not look like you will be able to go around, but on closer inspection, you do see that there are a couple of large, kind of blown apart, like blown open doors in the front of it. So you think if you make it to the factory, you can right through the doors. The trick is making it across the open ground up to it. And everybody, go ahead and do an alertness roll as you're kind of scoping this
I gotta
out.
roll dice. I haven't even warmed up my dice tonight.
You gotta roll those dice.
You're gonna die.
Yeah, that's
Roll
it.
the bones.
Ooh, 34. I survived.
Ot 6.
Trying to mute. 63 on a 63.
Oh, that's an amazing roll right there. So all of you recognize, as you're kind of looking out, peeking between some rubble, you're seeing some people get mowed down. You're watching some of them run, and the distance that they run doesn't match what they're running, and you see the ground shift like you've seen the buildings before. And it seems like there are obstacles that sometimes appear in front of them, and that's what trips some of them up as they then get gunned down. You get the feeling you can't just run it. You will have to exert some of this newfound control over the environment to pass this.
Travel with intent.
Unnatural, give me any insight into this?
Sure, yeah, go ahead and roll it.
We'll see. No, it does not. It does
does
not.
me.
It does
That's
not
an
for
11
me.
on a 12.
11.
That's an 11 on a
A
12.
51 on
Nice.
a 25. So
I'm going
Nice.
to die as soon as we get into combat.
yes,
Um,
yes, you are.
Yeah. Agent Updrift, go ahead and roll sanity as you you're making this unnatural realization as you kind of delve into this, is that this land bends to your whim, but you get the feeling that the more sane you are, the less control you have over this.
How much sanity did I lose on that?
It's only a D4. It's just you're kind of coming to this realization as you're very much a megalomaniac, right? So this probably fits in with a lot of
Solipsist, but yes.
this. Yes, right. You're in charge of this world. You can control it to a degree.
I'm stoked about this. All right.
And you, to provide some background, you do see that Don is talking a bit with the people there. He's helping them kind of get the machine gun moved up, prepped, and everything. So wherever you direct them to, they will be able to go. And they are entreating him, at least for the moment, to stay and help them for a bit. So.
Do we see where the majority of the force itself is?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes. Most of them are inside the building shooting out.
Okay.
Okay.
Although you are, every once in a while, you do see some other soldiers kind of stream past on the streets outside towards the factory and get gunned down. It is very much an active war zone.
Of the shift, are there any constant objects in the shifting landscape? Anything that is a permanent fixture, other than the factory itself, of
yeah.
course?
Yeah. Not so much on the ground in between, but you do recognize that past it, the palace, the kind of museum type building you saw, those are static. Those do not appear to shift.
So, okay. But nothing, what about like concrete bunkers, burned out cars, that kind of thing on the street? Do those all shift, or are there any static ones?
What cars?
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
I mean,
there's
just
tanks. Yeah, there's
tanks or,
tanks.
you know.
Yeah.
I'm looking for a path of cover.
Yeah. There's no cover that pops up in the ground between the factory and you, other than the bodies that fall. you think if you took long enough, everything could change. It's just a matter of some randomness. This place makes no sense about what changes when. It's always when you're not quite looking at it. It's difficult to say.
Okay. We have
What is it? I got a quick question. I want to ask the people that the sewer rats that brought us here.
Yes.
What is it that draws them out? Like, what is it that they need?
I mean, they always attack. As for they do not seem to need resupplies. They do not need food. They every once in a while we have some people charged out and they enter the city, but I do not know where they go. There does not seem to be an end to them.
I don't know if I was able to hear that conversation or not. Probably it's not hushed, right?
I mean, we're
yeah,
not keeping it secret from you.
Yeah.
kind of.
And you are
curious.
almost having to shout a little bit over the gunfire if you're above ground. It's loud.
As do any soldiers exit this factory while we're there? You said some go running by, but have we seen?
Yeah,
any
if you were to wait a little bit, you might see one or two kind of break away from the factory, and they have a little bit of cover from the factory. But you see a few people behind the barricades near you shoot them down. It's a terrible place to be.
When they fall, do they fall naturally, or does it remind me of the mannequins that we fought in the dungeon? Do I need to make a roll?
They fall. No, I don't think so. They fall pretty naturally. You get the impression that they're real, but also, who's real? Maybe they're just really good mannequins.
That's kind of what I was thinking. That when the sewer rat folks here said they don't sleep, they don't eat. Starting to think these may be the mannequin animatronic Disney monsters. How many grenades did we have? 4 or 12? I'm gonna say it was 12, right?
Sure.
I remember we picked up a bunch of grenades last time. I don't remember how many it was.
12 sounds fine. I don't think that'll change your life too drastically.
Oh, great. I am going to die. Again. Okay.
What kind of factory was this?
Tractors.
Yes, it was a tractor factory, but we have been making tanks. Or not we, I'm sorry. They have been making tanks out of it, but obviously there's been some fighting. I do not think the tanks are being made at the moment.
I'm assuming you were smelting metal to build the tractors, or was
if
that
I
being
am-
done at another spot?
If I am honest, I am not sure. I do not remember the factory from when I was last through here. I do not know where it came from. Perhaps it was here forever, and we just did not notice. But it is difficult to say.
So Updraft just kind of looks around for a second, and he looks further down the tunnel, and he sees that there is more tunnels that he cannot see down, as is the general rule.
Yeah.
And he is sure that all we've got to do is take that corner, and we can travel underneath the factory, and that we can use this to enter the factory while Undine, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Uses
he's helping.
the machine gun nest plus grenades to draw fire. Here's my plan. Okay, we're going to use the sewer because I'm sure there's a tunnel there, and it's always there. When I need it, it's there. Also, I'm going to relate this plan to the individual sewer rats, right? Be like, need a couple of you guys, and what I want them to do is to take the grenades and split them into 3 groups of 4. We'll have one guy go and he'll pop up and throw the initial grenades across the open field and try to hit the gate where the doors have been blown open, right?
Okay, yes.
Then-
Yes, it is open. You could just run through. There's nothing stopping you.
Except a real bad case of getting shot.
Yes, the bullets. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what I want you to do is you're gonna go take that tunnel over there.
Okay.
There's another drain. You'll pop up. You'll throw the grenades toward the gate, drawing attention there. I'll point out to another guy. You're gonna take 4 grenades. You're gonna double back on us, go up, and set yourself on a roof, or in one of the buildings on this side. When the soldiers begin to come out, you're going to throw not at them, not at the gates, but basically you're going to try to hit the top of that building, the top of the factory. Okay. The machine gun, that's when you guys are going to open fire. I want to have Undine to basically orchestrate all of this.
Okay.
And we're going to carry 4 grenades with us.
All right.
We'll take
I'm
the
not
tunnel that goes underneath the factory.
I do not think there is a tunnel that way, but you can certainly try. I suppose it is unlikely. But to be clear, I am not sure. It is quite a distance across the ground in front of the buildings to get to the factory. I'm not sure I can throw that far.
You just do your best. Just start with the first one. And when you throw, I am throwing with you. The lady will guide your arm.
Yes, sir. Okay. That will be with us. Yes, she will free us all.
She will give you the strength.
All right. They're working with Undine for this, but yep, you see them kind of split off and they are setting up the machine gun.
All right. And the go sign is once they're all set up, then we'll just do it on the clock. We'll just do it on the clock, right? We'll do it
Yep.
on like a 500 count. Okay.
Okay.
So we just sit there and I start counting, so they all get the count. 1, 2, 3,
Yes.
4, 5, 6. All right.
All right.
And so with that, the 3 of us are going. I just motion them like, let's go, and just take off down that tunnel and hang a hard left because that's how it is in my head.
Yep.
To go toward the factory.
All right. Roll a sanity check.
I don't know how I managed to pass this, but I did. 17 on a 31.
You take a left and you're like, this will work, and you find that it is a destroyed tunnel. It is just rubble straight down.
Where are we going now?
We're gonna have to run across. You said there's shells of tanks.
Yeah, there's times you think that if you can get across, it's possible, but you're really gonna have to try really hard.
Okay.
Yeah, and you see the Ethiel kind of sewer urchins counting with you.
Mhm.
They're making their movement up to the roof.
Mhm. All right.
Uh,
Then I guess we will try to take see if this other tunnel goes back around and maybe wraps around onto the side, similar to the other one.
Mhm.
Oh, that didn't work.
I
That was
got
the
you.
wrong
You're
thing.
kind
Yeah,
of looking around.
that was a crit failure to see if it would wrap around to a not into the factory, but so we will be closer and be able to just make like a straight run into use cover or
Okay.
whatnot.
Yep. Yeah, that's good. You do manage to find kind of an offshoot. You actually end up having to go down a little bit and then over, then up. But you do find there is a grate that basically is kind of a little off to the side of one of these barricades, a little bit sheltered. You think if you go straight from there, you can make a run right for the door, but timing will be everything there is.
From where I am, while we're still counting, are there? Can I see machine gun nests on top of the building?
Yeah. Yeah, and it looks like there's some snipers in windows. This place is pretty well armed.
Yeah. All right. So as soon as those grenades go, as soon as the first grenades go,
Okay.
we will use that as cover to
Agent yeah.
begin running. Is my
Okay.
plan.
Agent Unicorn, Agent Ursine, anything you were doing to prepare?
At this point, I figure following Updraft is as good as any other plan. He seems to know more about what's going on in this situation than I ever would, so I'm going to follow his lead.
That makes sense.
Believe that Undine had picked up a pistol, right? So if he's gonna man,
That sounds right.
if he's gonna man the machine gun nest, he won't have a need for that. I will probably would have taken that from him before. That way we have a weapon
makes
at least
sense.
with us, besides just
Right.
grenades.
Yeah,
So-
and he I don't think he had anything extra really in his possession, but if we get to it and you're like, oh, that's right, he had a book, he handed it to you just so
Okay.
you can keep going.
Makes sense.
Right.
Then I'm just going to be, basically checking that weapon and getting ready for the go signal. At this point, Updraft has never failed me. Well, except that 2 times. But, we're not counting those.
Except when he killed you.
Except when he killed me.
Except for, like,
You know.
every time.
Except for every time. So. Grant doesn't hold a grudge. She's trusting.
I'm just imagining you going like, and go, and then Updraft just waits.
Grant runs out.
Gotta.
Got him.
Yep.
All right, so I'll be holding 2 grenades.
Okay.
And my intention is, soon as we come out, the whatever, if the sniper is closest, if the machine gun nest is closest, I'm going to
Yep.
put a grenade right there. And if it's a sniper on the other side of a window, I'll count the grenade, I'll cook it, and then
Okay.
toss it so it explodes in
Yeah,
the air
and
outside the window.
Yeah, you're thinking based on kind of the line you've seen people going, about 20 meters out is when you'd want to throw that, because that's about when they start opening up, is when you're about 20 meters out.
Mhm.
So you'll have a little bit of run in to make it before they open fire, probably, just from a accuracy thing on their side. And the you're keeping count to 500. You're waiting, and you hit about 150, and you see them starting to throw the grenades. The machine gun starts to fire. Seems like the timing is off,
That's good.
but it is
That's fine.
it is go time.
Yeah, we'll just go with it.
All right. So you
I'll
are
be
running.
first. Yeah, I'll
Okay.
be first out and charging. Like I said, whoever's closest to me that I can see, get a grenade right next to them, and
Okay.
focus on getting through the factory. Right, it's not enough to get
Yep.
into the factory. We have
You
to
just-
get through the factory.
Yep.
So that's it. Use cover,
Oh.
concealment, whatever we need.
Yeah, absolutely. There's not a lot right now, but once you get to the doors, you think that's a lot safer. It's gotta be. And everyone make a SAN roll.
That's
Pass.
close. That's close. Okay, that's a pass.
All right. The two of you notice Updraft is making great strides across this. He's about halfway to the door, and the two of you are running, and the distance isn't closing. Go ahead and make a luck roll, both of you.
Fail.
What 9? Pass that one.
Oh boy.
Night.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Night, night, Ursine. Yeah, you want a cookie?
Oh, okay. No, that's
I
not
have
so
these
bad.
lovely
That's-
peanut butter cookies that I can eat.
And you, and so.
Is that
so
the last of the peanut butter cookies?
just make more. Agent.
She also kicked your dog.
Agent Ursine, yeah. You feel a bullet hit you pretty much center mass. Take 5 points of damage.
I'm dead.
Oh no. False. Agent Unicorn. What was that? Did you pass your
Pass
success?
0-9, yeah.
You take
I passed. No.
3 damage as a bullet ricochets off of a building and
All right.
yeah, lands, kind of catches you in the arm. And yeah, you kind of look back, you see Agent Ursine is lying on the ground.
I grabbed the grenade out of
bleeding
Ursine's hand and pull the pin and toss it in the direction of the way the bullets are coming from, hoping that I have steady aim. Hoping.
All right, yeah, you could definitely attempt it.
I don't think anything's gonna happen, but what am I rolling here?
Probably athletics to throw something, or just
Strength.
strength. Yeah.
Either one.
Strength is better, which isn't saying much. And that's not a pass. That is a fail. Not a critical, but a fail.
All right. Yeah, it hits the side of the building, kind of bounces a little, and then explodes, leaving a large divot in the ground, but you're not feeling progress. Agent Updraft, are you still running?
Yeah, that's the plan.
All
I
right.
expect everyone to execute the plan as it was given.
All
'Cause
right.
I
go-
am, so they should too.
Yeah. Go ahead and make your sanity check.
72?
Oh, you love to hear it.
Womp womp.
No way in hell that was a pass.
Also, because I forgot, yeah, Agent Union, go ahead. Agent Unicorn, go ahead and roll sanity again, but take a sanity or willpower loss from the last roll. I forgot
Oh.
to give that to you.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Take that from sanity first. All right. And the next one, oh, that's a big fat fail, 98.
All right,
50.
you finally find your footing underneath you, and you're running towards Updraft. And Updraft, you make it to the door of the factory, and you can see you've kind of made it past the bullets. You see them firing a few more rounds fire into poor Ursine's body that's lying on the ground. You think for the moment you're safe, but yeah, looking back, you see Agent Unicorn. Make another roll, please.
I'm gonna use these crappy dice that always fail.
That's what you need.
69 out of a 53. That's a fail.
Nice.
Only time a 69 is a failure.
Yeah. And you actually see, like, you're seeing the ground kind of shift you back and forth. There's something in you that's keeping you out of the path of these bullets as you're running, and you hit side by side with Updraft in the doorway. You have that moment of respite as you're seeing bullets firing, a couple more explosions, and looking into the factory, you recognize that you're not seeing people in here except for a form wearing a red uniform with gold piping and white collars and this strange white helmet on top. You realize it's a woman as she kind of looks up, and you see the haunted eyes of Agent Ursine. Agent Ursine, it's difficult to say how long you've been fighting for Ithiel. It's been years, decades. You're not sure who your allies are, who your enemies are. Go ahead and roll a d10.
9.
Lose 9 sanity
Okay.
as you're taking this rest. You had made it to the gates one time. Your entire platoon got wiped out behind you, but now you're looking up and you're seeing these people you dimly recognize from long ago.
Okay. So my hit points are returned to normal?
Yep.
Okay. All right. And I just kind of shake my head a little bit and look. Where do I know you from?
We didn't see
Oh, good point.
Ursine
Roll
get
sanity.
shot.
No, you absolutely saw her get shot.
Yeah.
And-
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's gonna be a
Multiple-
sanity roll,
I was
right?
like,
Go
I
ahead
didn't-
and do
I
a
didn't see it
sanity roll.
because I didn't see it because she was behind me, but now she's in front of me.
Oh,
Yeah, you
that's
would've-
a sand roll.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a sand roll.
That's gonna be a fail.
Roll a d6.
Oh,
then, as your-
okay.
Nope.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, roll a
5.
d6.
I only rolled a 2, but
That's not
that
good.
is a breaking point.
Let's see.
I am the king.
5. Yes.
For those that rolled a 5 or above and don't want to offset, go ahead and roll for a fight, flight, freeze, rank them, and then roll a d6.
Do you want me to do that too, even though my situation's a
no.
little weird?
Yeah,
No?
yours happened over time. Yeah,
Okay.
so you're good.
So, fight, flight, or freeze. I will say for me, it's going to be flight first, fight, then freeze. So,
All right, 1 through 3 will be flight, fight 4 or 5, and freeze is 6. If I heard those right.
and that's a 6. Yep. So, I freeze in place. Just kind of shocked and stunned by what I see in front of me. And I'll look back. The body's gone, obviously. That I can't see it anymore. And she's there in front of me, and I'm slack-jawed and kind of half stuttering as I'm also bleeding out of my left arm with a bullet hole in it. I'm just kind of holding it. I've got blood just running down, dripping off my elbow. Just kind of frozen in place at what I see. It's that slow motion back zoom of the camera from the blood drip off the elbow into frozen Gran. Just terrified.
Cookies won't solve that.
Cookies fix everything. What are you talking about?
Have you tried it?
That's right. Just hope none of this blood's dripping in my cookie bag.
So I think Agent Ursine asked you a question.
Oh.
How do you respond?
What was the question? I'm sorry. You asked how long it'd been, right? Or
Yeah.
where you know us from.
Yeah.
What? Okay, when we enter, what's going on inside this factory? First of all, is there anyone inside this factory shooting? Is there a threat posed? Just
No,
Ursine.
there isn't. It's dusty. Now that you're kind of looking around, it's dusty. It's quiet. You don't see any bodies. You can still hear the gunfire behind you, but it's almost seems to fade as you walk, even within the doorway. And you can see there is a back door out, and you can see beyond it, the city behind it. Looks quite different than the war zone you were just in.
What's in Ursine's hands?
A bolt action rifle, actually.
Is it raised?
No.
Just holding it? You're just confused. You're just like, huh? Okay. Let's see.
Yeah, like I am holding it, but I'm pointing it down. So it's not
Yeah.
pointed at you or, anything like that.
And I kind of slow down as I sprint in. As soon as we hit the door, we see Ursine kind of start to slow down. Unicorn is behind me, just locked up, frozen in place. And Updraft just yells, not an easily excitable man, but something along the line of if he was, vying for, nomination of the DNC, he might yell and people might take away his, but just, it's almost painful as he just screams and he just he has the sledgehammer in his hand and he just, why don't you know us?
That'll probably be enough to shake Gran back into some sense of the here and now. And I'll be like, kind of reach out and touch Updraft. It's okay. It's okay. It's not her fault.
Yeah, Updraft just shoves you off of
Yeah,
him.
I'm sure.
Just puts I'm not gonna say a face mash, because I don't think you're that tall. But actually, it might be like a head shove because you're not that tall.
Yeah.
It just shoves you away with one hand as he walks towards Ursine, just hands down to his side, completely blank stare in his face, and he just, why are you here? Why did you stop here? You take our throne. And he just points out the door, moving out the factory.
So you're continuing to move. You just walk right on by?
Yeah, just walking toward you, not in a threatening way, but just he's exasperated with, why would you even ask that question? Why are you still here? Why are you not on our throne? You're fighting the wrong side because our throne is on the other side. And then, go ahead.
What? I don't know who I'm fighting for or who I'm fighting against.
You're fighting.
It's just been
with us,
so
dude.
long. It's been years.
It's okay.
Yes.
We're together now, and we can go together again.
The false king sits on that throne and keeps us killing each other until
Okay.
we take our place.
We
And he like his knuckles are just white as he's gripping this sledgehammer handle, and just come on, and like just points and starts heading toward the door so he can look out. Updraft is like, you know, you see like a vein that you've never seen that's just running down the side of his face and his neck, like real close to an aneurysm. You're a doctor.
All right. So at this, I'm gonna look at Unicorn. You're injured. You need a medic.
Yes, very much.
Here, let me take a look at that.
You always did have a way of keeping us patched up.
And I kind of blink a little bit, like it's not clicking into place for me just yet. But that's a fail.
Okay.
I have a 79 in first aid, and I rolled an 86. Just wanted you to know that.
I guess
Well, keep marking it for an improvement, I guess.
Right.
I've not been
By the
keeping
time we're
count.
done.
Yeah, right. I've not been keeping count, but I'm pretty sure you failed more than you've succeeded.
Like, how is the, yeah.
You have never healed me.
Yeah,
It's
I don't know.
that's good instincts, probably, to be honest. Yeah, it's the skills feel a little rusty, maybe that's what it is. It's just been so long since you've had to worry about it.
I don't
okay.
have the supplies here to help.
That's okay, dearie. It's okay. It'll stop up in a bit. It's just
Can
kind of
you
got
s-
his finger stuck in my bicep.
But where do I know you?
You honestly don't remember us?
I sort of, but it's all hazy.
Do you remember the McAllister building? New York's Central Park.
And I get this kind of like faraway look on my face.
Manny's Deli. And I'll rattle off a few of these locations that we've been to that are common, like we spent a lot of time together at, and see if any of it triggers a memory response.
Updraft looks you dead in the face. Like he stops, looks over his shoulder,
Yeah.
and looks at you, and just, do you remember Maddie and Lisa and Nick?
And I just kind of blink my eyes a little bit.
Do you remember Abby?
Abigail Wright?
It's a start.
Here you go. Welcome back.
That's right. Okay. Yeah, I think it's starting to become clearer.
We need to take our place in that palace.
The play.
We're here to get in the palace, which means, and he's going to look over. Can I see the pier?
So yeah, let's as the three of you kind of walk to the back door of the factory, you look out and now you're seeing the city again for what feels like the fourth time, maybe the fifth. Who knows? It feels strange. And now the streets are quiet and clean. There's tidy little bundles of trash stacked every so often. You can see shapes moving further in the city, but they're indistinct. And you're seeing some, like, there's a little smoke from chimney, but there are no lights on. The whole place just feels not abandoned, but too terrified to come out of its shell. And hanging over it, you see the palace, a fair distance away still through the city, but closer than ever. You see as well a large columned building, kind of makes you think of like a museum of some kind. And you had heard about the pier. As you kind of keep your eyes moving, you see a large wooden building built onto a pier that is on the edge of this lake. Kind of looks like an old boardwalk mall with this peeling white and red paint on it. And these are the three most noticeable buildings. They're far bigger than anything around it. And additionally, on that building on the pier, you notice there's a strange contraption on the roof that is about house sized. It kind of looks like a merry-go-round mixed with one of those celestial orreries.
Well, the docks, they
Is-
said.
Is that the next place we're supposed to be going?
That is where we're going.
Yes, that's where we're going, to the docks. That's our transportation. Do you remember? Do you remember Dawn? And I'll kind of keep every once in a while throwing a name out there just to try to bring her back to us.
Undyne?
Yes, yes.
Where shouldn't he be with you? Us?
He stayed behind to ensure our successful entry.
Oh,
You just made it there before we did. I'm gonna kind of not gonna tell her that she died in front of me. You made it there. You beat even Updraft. You beat him to it.
I don't remember it at all.
It did
Maybe it's
happen
just-
fast.
And you're walking kind of as you're chatting about this. You're walking along this pier and you kind of see it's next to a large like a mall, like a open area that the mists from this lake are rolling across. You can see further on along the shoreline, it looks like the palace is set, looming large, finally almost within reach. But next to you, you see there is the pier itself. Is kind of built out again like a boardwalk thing. You can actually just kind of walk into the building from the pier itself. It has one of those large open arches, and it is kind of dimly lit. And just looking inside, you see it's leaking from the roof. There's little pots and pans put around. Some of them bronze, some of them tin. Just odd pots and pans, machine parts scattered around the building. It's very busy, but almost meditative in its nature.
Are we supposed to meet someone here that's going to ferry us across? Take us the rest of the way? Ambrose, I believe is his name.
Ambrose.
Yes, I actually took notes last week.
Nice.
Something about using a device to get us to the palace. Perhaps that's that funny looking thing up there.
Okay. So you're standing at the entrance. Are you walking further into this
I think I'll call out first.
building?
Ambrose! Ambrose, are you here?
And there's a moment or two you're calling out and you hear some clattering from within, and then a voice from far distant in the factory. Yes, come on inside. Come on. I'm quite busy at the moment.
Sounds an awful lot like Mr. Castaigne.
How dare you? I am legally distinct in so many. You know what? You're out. Get out. No help.
This is a distinctive voice. This is different.
Yes.
This was
yeah.
more hollow.
A little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. He sounds like a man with a broken spirit.
Oh.
It's like Updraft's favorite.
That's right.
Oh,
Right.
all right. So
Fine, maybe it sounds like a different old guy. Yeah, see? Welcome. Yeah, Ambrose is here. Yeah.
oh God.
See?
Yeah. Sure. Sure.
Is
yeah,
that what you want?
Ambrose.
No. He's doing the old man voice.
Okay.
Come on within. Come. Please.
Finally, somebody my own age.
I feel like he goes by Ambrose because his first name is Milton, and even he knows.
Yep, I'll wander in
Yeah.
cautiously.
As you walk through the building, cautious is probably wise. You do notice there are various just machine parts throughout that they'd hurt if you stepped on or you stubbed a toe. So you're picking your way carefully. And eventually you start to see candles put up throughout, and you approach the center of this wide area. You see that there is an old man wearing a strange silvery robe that you recognize is identical to the ones from Encounter Group. He is carrying a large monkey wrench that he is twisting on a large gear. It looks like he's putting the finishing touches on this strange bellowing machine that it doesn't have any power. It's very odd to look at. And he's got stains kind of all over him, and he's wiping his head with a rag. Agent Ursine, you recognize his face as your hand touches that locket that you've kept with you for decades. This is the man from the locket. All right, that should do it. How can I help you, friends?
I have this locket that has your face, your picture in it.
Oh, I had lost that so long ago. Wonderful. Oh, thank you. Do you mind?
And I'll hold it out where he can see it, but I'm not going to let go of it yet. And I'm going to say, it was in a can of paint. Did you put it there?
I'll be honest, things tend to get away from me. I don't remember, but perhaps there was a mistake in the preparation room.
What preparation room would that be?
Oh, it's just back there. It's where we make everything.
What sorts of things do you make?
Well, I mean, that's difficult to say. We really make everything.
Do you make bottles here?
Okay, you caught me there. I don't make the bottles. That's really not my thing. Although I did make the one who does.
Oh, and who's that?
I called in the sommelier. Kind of a little joke, with the bottles. He's one of the marionettes.
Did he have another name?
I don't usually give them extra names. I don't recall. Sometimes people give my creations names of their own volition, and I like that people like them enough. I can show you the room where I have the marionettes if you want.
Yes, that would be great, and I'll go ahead and hand him the locket.
Oh, I've lost it. I wish I'd still had the one with her picture in it, but this is pretty good too. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Who is she?
I don't quite recall, but I remember she's very important.
Seems to happen a lot around here.
Yes, you get used to it after a while. Yes, I remember it. She was very important to me. I just wish I remembered why. But I suppose I have my things now to make up for that. But
Show
please,
us.
please.
Yes, please show us.
And he takes you. Actually, he'll take you through an area. It's kind of near the back. We'll have to go through the preparation room to get there. Please don't touch anything. It's very important that they stay accurate. You understand for everything. And he leads you through a door out of this room into this vast open factory filled with tables and shelves to the brim of just odds and ends and boxes. It actually has an open ceiling above it, but you don't see that rain is really getting down here. And he kind of looks around. Let's see what you can see. We have all sorts of interesting things that we've been making here. Ooh, yes. I think you'll recall this one. And he shows you a stack, a table that's filled with stacks of papers. And as you look at them, you recognize from the plays you found in the McAllister building that you had found that described exactly what was going on. You found these are laid out. There's a few copies of them laid out in sequential order, very neatly. Go ahead and do a sanity check, everyone.
Yeah, that seems about right.
That's a fail.
Hey, I passed.
Just
92.
just a one on a failure.
I passed
Okay.
this time. Looking at these, what's the last stack is it kind of,
Oh, there's no ordering that you can discern
Okay.
from it.
that's kind of what I was curious, as if we were in a particular place. What else is around? I'm going to specifically look for things that would jump out as recognized. Artwork,
Okay.
specifically, if there's any paintings or...
Yeah.
I
Go
think
ahead.
you know the one I'm looking
Yeah.
for.
Yeah. You do find the painting. I believe you're looking for the clown. Is that the one you're looking for? Yeah. Yep. You go back a few stacks and over as you're wandering around, and you see there is one of the painting of the clown dancing in the park, and you see it is there. But as you get closer, you see that it's not the only frame there. It's kind of like at the front of a bunch of other painting frames.
It's like they're just stacked up on each other.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll take the curiosity look, and kind of lean it forward and look at the next few. Kind of looking to see, is there also one of the man in the trash bag robes at the top of the stairs?
Well, the first thing you do
Okay.
as you flip through, you find more of the clown in the park and more. You're seeing about 5 copies of that. And then, yep, you hit. Here's the man at the top of the stairs. You're hitting a few copies of that. And as you're touching them, you realize your hand is coming away with a little bit of paint residue. It's like a little tacky still.
Huh. It would appear these aren't dry yet. You know, Agent Undine would really love this. I believe, Ambrose, do you have some sort of a device that for traveling places?
Oh yes, the orrery. Yes, of course. We can get to that after the marionettes, if you wish. I do love to take trips in it. It's quite fun.
We need to be going to the palace.
We've seen enough marionettes, I
Oh.
think.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Yeah, you've seen one marionette. I think you've seen most all of them.
Oh, there's quite a few differences between them. You know, they're as unique as you or I.
Oh yes, yes, we're well acquainted at the Hotel Broadalbin.
Oh, yes, the hotel. You've been there.
Yes, in fact, that's how we got here. Was from the hotel. So
Ah, yes, I'm pretty proud of a lot of the stuff there. Oh, I bet you'll get a kick out of this one. And he points off to the side, and you see there are a number of letter holding spikes laid out. Remember that with Elmer? It was difficult to get it quite right every time, you know. Do another sanity.
yeah, that's a
I
fail.
passed that one.
But
Yeah.
Gran wouldn't remember
wouldn't
because
remember 'cause I
Gran was
wasn't
not
there.
Oh,
there.
that's true. That's true. Oh, that wasn't you. Never mind.
It was somebody
share
that
all of
looked a
your
lot
memories.
like you.
Yes, that was. Oh, never mind. Then you'll be interested. Look over there. We have more of your cookie tins. Do you know the level of detail in that? It's no small feat.
Yeah, I still failed that sanity roll.
Yes.
As did I.
I said, you tall and very sullen one. I think you'll be interested. It's a dead medium, I'm aware. Do you know how difficult it is to make VHS tapes? It's quite difficult. But look at what I was able to accomplish. And he points out a number of these VHSs that you remember from so long ago, killing a bunch of students and taking out of the VCR.
Do they play?
Of course. Every one of these authentic. You won't notice a single difference.
I want to go and like this is peak updraft. He's gonna walk over, and I'm assuming there's like a TV and a VCR there,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and he's going to begin to play these tapes and watch them.
All right. Well, this is great because you have read the book. And as you're watching this tape, it does like an NBC Presents kind of crawl. And I believe it is called Her Grey Song. But as it starts to go, you realize it's a television adaptation of The King in Yellow. It's not perfect. Some of the lines are a little odd, but you're watching and they're hitting the right bits. And I guess how long are you going to spend watching this?
I mean, a minute. If no one stops updraft, he's going to watch it to its conclusion.
Oh, I am sorry. It is actually named the Yellow Phantom.
Yeah. If no one interferes, updraft's watching it to conclusion, because updraft is formulating his plan to usurp the throne from the false king, who is keeping it warm for me.
So yeah, the other two of you, you're watching. Updraft just kind of starts watching this old tape, and
I'd join in.
Ambrose-
Like
Yeah, and watch too. Like, what is this? What are they watching?
like the sledgehammer begins to slide out of his hand as his hand kind of loosens its grip and it balances on its head, and he just kind of loosely with his hand resting on top of it, almost as if an old man would rest his hand on a cane. He is engulfed and making all sorts of little mental notes about things that he may need to be aware of once he is in his right place.
What about Agent Unicorn? What are you doing?
So my curiosity is piqued at to 110% here as the two of them get engrossed into this film. Unicorn's gonna kind of step away and looking through this warehouse of art and things, going on basically a scavenger hunt for the books, the flags. Like I'm checking the boxes, right? I'm an archaeologist. So I want to check all the boxes. I'm still cataloging the evidence, as it were, looking for all those things that were in Abigail's apartment. Just
Yeah.
verifying that, yep, all this is a prop, all this is a play. If from day one we have been duped into this whole thing. And
Well, yeah, there's good news for you. Because as you're looking, you're thinking, I'm going to have to go and take off this whole thing. And you stop because you recognize there's a number of cardboard boxes set up. And you recognize them. They're labeled as the FBI 1995 case. And you open them and you see within are all of the original bits on the wall with none of the resin. It looks like these have not been affixed yet. But the worst part is it's not one copy. You're looking through the boxes, they're duplicated again and again and again.
as suspected,
Yeah, go ahead and you mentioned it. Go ahead and roll sanity one more time. This one's a helplessness one.
okay,
It's a little bit
goody.
bigger as you are realizing.
Ooh, 46 on a 48. Ooh,
All right.
I made
So
it.
only one
Nice.
is you're starting to realize this has all been set up.
So
All of this.
with that, I want to. Would it be possible that the tomahawk from Van Fitz is nearby?
Yeah, you can go looking for it while they finish up reading. You
Sure.
can probably get one.
I kind of want to grab one of those, and when I come back, maybe they're just about done watching the video. I'm just gonna toss it in Updraft's lap, just like gently, just drop it.
Okay.
Just hold it out because I'm standing there.
Or
so
yeah,
that
if you're
there's-
standing, not sitting, yeah, I'll just hold it. Kind of. Remember this?
Yeah,
Kind
and
of way.
as Unicorn's coming back with this hatchet, the two of you are watching this tape, and it's not great. Like it's well enough done, but not amazing. And they start into the final scene at the castle and the party. You see the royal family is there, milling about in this big masquerade. You see someone in blue that you recognize as Abigail Wright. She's just walking around in this group of actors. She looks lost. And there's someone else there. And he's been around for a lot of this. A man dressed in a kind of pathetic yellow robe and a blank white mask that even on kind of the crappy VHS, you can see the string behind the back, like holding it on. It's not very good, but it's compelling as he seems to be following her and no one's noticing, and he's getting closer, and the party starts to build up to a crescendo of people going, yes, unmask, and he's reaching towards his mask, and the VHS skips and stops.
Of course.
Hmm.
Is this the false king that you were speaking of?
Yes. We are the only true king. The false king is keeping this, is perpetuating this. Because they are unwilling to bear the burden of leadership.
Yes.
And I'm just like Just narrowed my eyes, like, okay. All right.
Ambrose. I just Updraft just kind of looks over and is just like, Ambrose. the
Yes,
party.
of course.
You have clothes that we could borrow for the party.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Let me go find some. I have a few masks. Are you a frog, hawk, fly, minotaur, a heron, a dog? What kind of animal do you prefer?
What kind of mask was the king wearing? Was it just the plain? No. I'm asking you. Was it just the plain one?
It's a plain white mask. Yep.
That's what I'm gonna go for. I'll be like, I
Ah.
suppose a ghost.
A ghost. Interesting. Something like that, I suppose. How about for you two? Costumes?
Yes. Do you have anything more along the tiger?
Oh, a tiger. Yes, I if you can give me a few minutes, I can start people working on that, I suppose.
Excellent.
I would like a bear, please.
A bear. Well, none of those were options I gave, but of course, I'll do my best.
I have a feeling you could manage almost anything we would ask you.
Except the
Of
bottles.
course. Yes. Oh, actually, that brings me to the other thing. Do you have an invitation?
I'm gonna pull out the invitation.
Oh, wonderful. You know, well, I won't bore you with it, but they didn't have an invitation. How can you go to a party without one?
How rude,
Excellent.
right? Right, it's so rude to go to a party
I'm
without
gonna-
an invitation.
Updraft just starts going through the clothes and everything, and he's looking to try and dress himself as closely to, like, considering all of the images of the king that he has.
Yep.
He is going to dress himself as closely to that as he can, preferably in some sort of robe that has like large, the sleeves.
Yeah. Yep. Very covering. And he
yeah,
does his best to provide. The problem is the mask is eluding him. The other two, the tiger and the bear, are not really a problem, but you're saying a ghost and he comes back with a face, and all of these have very metallic bits, very like mechanical parts that move. In fact, like for Grand, you put it on and you can actually kind of express with the eyes a little bit in the mask. They're amazing contraptions. Like they move, they blink. You can feel the mouth opening and shut. And for Agent Updraft, he's having I'm sorry, this is the closest I have. And you see it's your face, but gaunt. And these metal eyes seem haunted and hollow somehow.
nailed it.
Oh, great. Well, but what I was trying to say, and I'm terribly sorry about this, I cannot. Who's this invitation for? Which one of you had it?
It was mine. It came out of my bag.
But who's the name on it? I'm sorry, I don't have my glasses on, despite what it looks like.
It was JC, wasn't it? JC Lynn?
Yes.
Oh yes. Oh, nice man. He walked through here. Yes. I've been making his typewriters for a while, you know. He's very particular. I see. Yes. Well, I'm afraid these won't work for you, but I do know that a certain device that we can go to. It shouldn't take long. If we hop on my little contraption, we'll go right there and get you invitations.
Very well.
Unless there's anything else you need, I'm happy to help. It's I'll be honest, it's been a long time since I've had any discussion. The The Clockwork Child stops by every so often, but isn't very chatty.
The Clockwork Child. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Well, yes, I can just call for it. Little friend, come in. And it takes a minute as he's kind of looking around like, it sometimes gets lost in the shelves. It's not always the brightest. And you see there is the small clockwork creature that you saw in France in the 1400s comes clacking down the one of the aisles, and you notice it has a book in its hands. And yeah.
Can I see that book? And I'm talking both to Ambrose and the Clockwork.
Of course, be careful. It is a master cop. And as he's warning this little creature, it knocks against one of the tables, and you see an inkwell tips over, and a little bit of ink splashes onto the book. And you realize that this is A World Without Doors, and that ink splotch matches every copy of it that you've seen. It's had the same fresh splotch on the cover. And Ambrose, of course, is, oh, drat. Fine. I suppose we can make that correction.
I passed that sand roll. Considering how many copies of that book I've handled, I did pass, surprisingly.
It's
But
fine. It's fine. It's fine.
Do you need us to all make one?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. It's this will be the last one as you're all kind of coming to terms with this, but
Failed.
yeah,
I'm good.
This is gonna be
just
fun.
one more.
That's my breaking point.
Yeah.
Good for
isn't
you.
that like your first breaking point, though?
That's my second one.
Okay.
Amateur hour.
So I guess we kind of know how Updraft broke, but how does this break Agent Ursine?
So, as I'm looking at this and I'm seeing this ink splotch, and everything is just kind of clicking into place in my brain that this is all predetermined and that everything has already been written and everything has already been, basically this is fate and this is willed, and there is no way to break from predestiny, and that we are predestined to do this, and that all of this has been predestined the entire time. So now she's like, okay, whatever happens is what is supposed to happen. And it doesn't matter what choices that I make. I'm not actually making those choices because those choices have already been made for me. And that is the form that this is taking. And it's kind of a weird sense of like hopelessness and like mild depression that starts to sink in.
That checks out. Yeah.
Swear we met this guy.
I'm sorry.
It's
It's probably because my voice sounds so similar to a friend of mine. It actually does. My friend Hildred, if we go by the scribe, we could always stop by Hildred's room too.
Oh, Hildred. Oh, yes, I know of Hildred.
You do?
Yes, we know of Hildred, the relative of Mr. Castaigne. Yes.
Well, I mean, he is a
Brother.
Castaigne. Yes.
Brother, yes.
Yeah, that's what they say. Who knows? I'm never sure with them. They talk genealogy so much it makes my ears fall off.
Yes, they do speak a lot of genealogy.
They have quite the family tree.
Oh,
They're
Many
just
generations.
everywhere.
It's
Flares.
It's terrible. Terribly dull.
Why is that?
It's just not interesting. I don't care about that. I like building things. I build things. This talk about who's the king or whatever, who cares? The king is the king. He always will be.
Why is
Yeah.
that?
The nature? The king is the king.
It's just the way it goes.
A rose is a rose. Yes, I don't know how to
I
explain it.
understand. I understand.
It's all predestined.
There's some argument about that, yes. Some say that, but there's always choices to be made.
Were you in 1402 with the clockworks and the Castaigne chateau?
I do recall a friend of mine, Gabriel. I don't remember if I was there. I thought I made these. And he seems genuinely kind of confused by that. He's looking towards the back room, towards where he kind of gestured the marionettes were. Time is it's a confusing thing.
Yeah, it is. It is confusing for me as well. But you wouldn't happen to have another name that you go by, would you? Like Marbus or Bale?
Oh, Marbus. No, no, he was through here not that long ago. He took some things. But no, I'm afraid that Bale gets me quite a bit of my business. I don't want to say business. He gives me a lot of work. I do a lot of work for Bale. He likes to put things just so. He works for the king, you know.
Of course he does.
I don't know. He's a strange individual. I have his notebook somewhere in here.
May I have it?
I suppose so. Yes, let me go see. And he kind of disappears into the stacks.
While he's gone.
yes.
While he's gone.
Yeah.
As soon as he is out of Updraft's sight, or as soon as Updraft's out of his sight, Updraft is going to begin looking for, or going to instruct the Clockwork Child to bring him the master copy of The King in Yellow.
All right. It's tough to tell if it understands, but it does. Go ahead and make a sanity check just to see.
All right. That's a 30 on a 28.
All right,
Yeah.
all right. It does disappear and it comes back with a book. And you're kind of flipping through. Yeah, this looks like The King in Yellow, and you're flipping through it for the first time because this is a different copy. You see a name in it. You realize this is the first translation of The King in Yellow by an Emmett Mosby. And it is dated, I believe, 1955. I could be a little off on the year.
Is there anything else that's different about it?
This one, I suppose it would have a note at the front. You do see it is a translation of Le Roi and Juan, a French play. It sounds like it had been discovered in the wreckage of a Chateau de Port in France. It looks like he had found it after it had been found after the war, and he had done some work in translating it to English from there. But beyond that, the text is what you had seen before. It looks like it was republished into what you had seen.
Does it name the king?
It does not. It is
Okay.
still just the king. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
going in the bag.
Yeah, that's fair. Ambrose eventually comes back, and he's got a wire-bound notebook that has been battered 6 ways to Sunday. It looks terrible, but he hands it to Agent Ursine. Here you are, Bale's notebook. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but more power to you.
It probably won't make much more sense to me either, but I do want to see it. And then I'll sit down and start shuffling through this notebook.
Okay. That'll take a little bit, but not terribly long. So while you're doing that, what are the other two up to?
I'm figuring out
I guess
some.
you're looking at the book, yeah.
I'm going to use a belt to affix the tomahawk that was handed to me by Unicorn to my chest underneath this rope. Basically, just tomahawk going square across the chest, have the belt on it so that I can just pull it out by reaching inside and just,
Perfect. Yes.
because
And-
I'm assuming they're not going to let me walk around a party with a sledgehammer. Really
Yeah.
disappointed about that, but
Who knows,
you know.
man? In Carcosa, who knows?
we're going to try.
Yeah. Agent Unicorn, what are you up to?
I am trying to figure out and piece together this familiarity of this maker. Like, I know that Castaigne told us about him, but there's something else, something more. And I just feel a connection to this maker. Maybe it's just the exposure of all the things. Maybe it's the archaeologist in me who wants to know the creator, right? So I'm going to kind of, as Ursine is going through the notebook and Updraft is looking at the king in yellow and all of his things, I kind of use that to my advantage and just call him, so you're the creator. Is that correct?
That's not exactly. Kind of. I make things, certainly, but I don't know that I'd call myself the creator.
Well, I'm a studier of creations and culture, and it seems as though you have developed a bit of a creation of a culture here.
Yes, I create what's necessary, I suppose. Yes, many people order things, and I make them. The king has a certain way things must go, you know.
So all of these, and I'll point to everything kind of just generally waving in the warehouse, these are rejections from the king or extras?
Oh, they're not rejections. These will be going out shortly.
So
I pack them up and deliver them when they're needed.
very well. No, that's excellent.
No, these are all ready for the play. We're ready for it.
How many times have you played this out? How many creations have you made for the king? And how many kings have you served?
Oh, one king. It's only the king.
So there was no one before Hildred?
Oh, Hildred's not the king. He wants to be, let me tell you.
So we were misled then. So who?
He wants to be the king very badly. He thinks his genealogy will prove it, but
Yes, I understand those types. I've studied them. So who would the king be at this time? Perhaps I've known his name or hers.
No, you don't. Perhaps you've seen it. I think the closest you might have seen is the Phantom of Truth. The Phantom of Truth.
Phantom of Truth, yes. Does ring a bell. Anything more about him, though, that you could tell me?
I mean, he's the king.
Is he fair,
He
merciful, cruel, innocent?
I would not say he is merciful. He is accepting. He allows others to serve him, you know.
Allowed?
In a way, yes. It's he lets people create their own path, if that makes sense. But
Does.
they always walk in his footsteps. They create the play, but the play creates the world, which creates them, creates the play. I don't know quite if you understand.
No, I think I get the idea. It's very cyclical and self-reinforcing. So that tells me what we need to know.
Well, I'm glad I
do.
could help.
Yes, it's wonderful to study different creations and societies and cultures. It's so illuminating to the mind and just lovely to experience something different. So the people create the play that creates the people that serve the king, who is accepting.
Yes.
And I'll turn at that, and I will turn to Updraft and say, "Well, my
Like an
lord."
accepting guy. I feel like I'm an accepting guy.
So yeah, I will look and look right at Updraft and say, "My lord, are you prepared to?"
I want to look at Ambrose and I want to ask, do you remember the time before the war?
I wish I could say I did. It's always been there. I've never involved myself in such things, really. It's a bloody business. That's not really my jam.
I mean, you're providing marionettes for the war, right?
I don't know. I think some might end up there, but it becomes difficult to differentiate after a while. It's been so long or not long enough. I'm not sure. I'm sorry. You three are the first ones I've seen in ages. I mean, last
We're the
one's
last
through here.
ones.
Perhaps for a time.
No, who were the last ones?
Oh, that woman, Abigail, and the man, Emmett.
the insurance salesman
Encyclopedias.
or encyclopedia salesman.
Oh, no, I don't believe so. It's he was he was one of you. What do they call them?
Smith?
Yes,
He was an agent.
yes, thank you. Yes, he was an agent of Delta Green. I'm not going to lie. Those are some of my favorite props to make.
When did you make him?
Oh, I don't think I made him. He's been around. He was when did he get sent? He was in the 50s for a while, but then he took a vacation. Oh, you know what? I think he was going to the party as well. I don't know if he's going to get in. I think he had an invitation, but I don't recall.
Did you make Buck as well?
I'm
See if
sorry.
you've seen-
Did you make Buck?
Buck. I think I have made some. Yes, I think there was there a replacement for him? I don't recall.
I don't know if there was or not.
Well, I'm sure it doesn't really matter.
So I'm just throwing that out there.
I only
you-
came
are you
close
sure
to dying
about
in the
that?
bottle bin, and I didn't die
Right. Exactly.
because this is my play.
Mm-hmm.
Agent Ursine, as they're talking, you are flipping through this wirebound notebook, and you are finding in it, it is inked in red, and it is a number of notes of how to contact and manipulate certain individuals. And just because Undine isn't around, he's talked with you a bit. The names are ringing bells as you're going through, and you're starting to see these seals written down, and you're beginning to realize that these are the demonic seals. This appears to be some form of the Ars Goetia. But additionally, there are a number of times where they say to use the sigils, like person at this location. And you notice there's one for Abigail's apartment that they were to put it. You additionally notice that there is one for the angel that you contacted in France in the 1400s. And it does name the two of you as having summoned, I believe is Messiah. I'm getting it wrong, but the angel you summoned.
Okay. Do I see any for any here in Ethiel? Ethiel?
Ithiel. No, you do
Ithiel,
not.
okay.
Right, you're not seeing any there.
Okay. Ambrose, would it be okay if I held on to this? I mean, certainly you have copies.
Of course. You know me. Yes, feel free. That's not the original. But yes, of course. But Bale keeps a pretty close eye on that one, I can assure you. But did we
Thank
want
you.
to did we want to take a trip? I know you
To the
had
party.
mentioned that.
To the
To the
party.
party. Well,
Mhm.
we should probably get your invitations first, but that's a brief jaunt.
Very well.
Okay.
All right, right this way. And he leads you up some stairs to the roof of the building, and you can see from the roof out this museum-like structure, and then kind of along the shoreline, the palace again. And he's walking up to this massive steam-powered machine you're seeing now, and it very much looks like a merry-go-round of like these wooden painted sculptures, but there's not just horses, there's fish and dogs and various other creatures, all with saddles, and they're kind of orbited by these other interlocking rings, and it looks like a death trap. But he's happily going up to it as some of these wooden things have a little bit of steam coming out of their nose, and he's grabbing goggles. You'll want these.
Yes,
right.
of course.
All right. Go ahead and pick one of the animals to hop onto, and we will get started.
Is there a tiger?
Sir.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a tiger.
Ride the tiger.
I'm gonna jump
Yeah,
on the tiger.
Yeah, it kind of crinkles under you as you jump onto it. It's
Like-
kind of got like a paper mache coating to it.
That checks out. Checks out 100%.
Yeah.
Ah, yes. I fondly remember you.
Yes. Do make sure that you're strapped in.
Are there
Object,
seatbelts?
No. Make sure you're strapped in. I understand you might have problems with authority, but strap in.
Are there seatbelts? Like, I'm looking around.
Yeah, there's straps on it.
Okay.
Get on a shark.
A
It's
bear.
got a big toothy grins on both of those. All right. Oh. And he reaches down and he picks up the clockwork child, which is kind of rattled after him. And they walk into the center of the machine. You can see it's got like a little booth in there. And he goes, "All right, do hold on very carefully." As he slams the door, you hear a lock from within. And he starts pulling levers inside. You see there's like a little window. And, you know, he pulls a lever, steam starts going out one, pulls another, you start to rotate. And the floor wobbles a little bit. It doesn't seem steady as it picks up speed. And you're just watching the city around you blur and blur. And pretty soon you can't make out anything other than the blur. Your hair's whipping like past your face. Yeah, you are going to be sick as hell once this is done. Everybody roll sanity.
Oh, it's the Willy Wonka boat ride.
Yeah.
41.
He starts
Pass.
reciting one weird rhyme. Yeah. A failure is a D4 from helplessness. A success is 1. As you feel like you're just going to,
Oh,
if your strap breaks, if your strap breaks, you're splattered. That's that. And let's go to break as you whip around this machine.
All right. Well, that's a 4 sand loss for Grant.
Updraft just yells no spinnies.
As riding the tiger has never been so much fun.
And now I have that Dio song stuck in my head. It's not gonna leave.
You're welcome. You're welcome very much. As we go to break, I will leave you all with that stuck in your head. And we'll be back in a few minutes, folks. Hang in there. I had the wrong
Sound.
slide up.
Sound
Sorry.
out.
Yeah. But
Sound is out.
No, it's not now. I had the wrong slide up. It should be good now. Sorry,
Gina
y'all.
says.
no
Gina
problem. As you,
says
There we
there
go.
wasn't
Yeah.
any sound. Gina said.
Billy broke it.
That's a new hashtag, y'all.
It's not new.
Billy Burkett.
Billy broke it. The classic.
Yeah, that's
good
kind
old-
of been that's a long one.
What are you
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about? This is the first time this has ever happened.
Oh, good. I forgot about
Give me
that.
some grace. Okay, this is my first time doing this.
And as you're whipping around this, you arrive in a room that seems like it's very strange because it seems like it would be a very small room with just this velvet rope beyond it. But it's bubbled out like a snow globe to fit this orrery around you. So there's enough space for this thing to fit, but there's no way this room was supposed to. Everything seems stretched oddly. Everyone who failed their sanity roll, you are feeling incredibly nauseous for the next let's see how long. It is in minutes. For the next 4 minutes, you feel like you're probably straight up throwing up, staggering out of it. But Agent Nursing, you feel fine. The bear was the right choice to hop onto, you think. And Ambrose hops off the machine. Marvelous, isn't it? What fun! Oh, ooh.
I think they needed Dramamine before they got on the ride.
I said no spinnies.
Oh dear, I've lost my cookies.
Oh.
That's all right. I've got more, but not here. The good news is we've bypassed a lot of the gallery. Honestly, it's not incredibly safe for everyone. So we went right to the scribe. And he gestures beyond this velvet rope on the floor into the back of this room, which has a very kind of Victorian study feel to it, very, like wood, red wallpaper throughout, kind of a dim light. And you see there is a porcelain doll that looks like a 17th century gentleman sitting at a desk. He has a quill pen in one hand and a pile of blank paper in front of it. On the left of the side of the table, there is an empty wooden tray that kind of looks like it's kind of set up a little bit at an angle, like a sheet music shelf.
Okay. Porcelain guy.
What? Go ahead. I think you got a little bit on you. Well, I'm sure they won't notice it at the masquerade.
Do you have a napkin by chance? A handkerchief?
Just use the clothes of the mannequin.
I mean, you can. He's just past that velvet rope.
That wasn't advice. That was just.
Oh.
Yeah.
I approach it.
Okay.
I approach it. And
As
long
you-
as it's,
yep.
yeah.
As you walk past the velvet rope, the scribe kind of jerks up in a kind of clattering motion and dips the quill in ink and quickly scribbles on the paper.
I want to look at what it's writing.
And what it says is William Buchanan enters the room of the scribe.
Mm.
And as you walk up, it says, damn it, why did I click away? I shouldn't have done that. It says, Barbara Nelson approaches the scribe.
Scribe, are you the one that wrote the play?
And as you're asking, you see it's Barbara Nelson, scribe. Are you the one that wrote the play? It's copying word for word what you are saying.
Oh, I'll walk up and step past the rope, noticing that it's writing exactly word for word what
Yep.
Ursine says. And
Says
I will-
Lisa Stevens and George Lawrence approach the scribe.
And I'm guessing that Updraft probably has the invitation readily available to show. Or we've all read it and know what it says, right? One or the other. How it's worded. So I'm
yeah.
going to recite the invitation, but insert my name instead of JC Lynn's.
And it scribbles out what you are saying on it. But you realize it's not it does not look like the invitation you have. It's just writing out what you're saying.
That was a test theory. So that was wrong. It's okay. Well, is this? I'll turn and look at Ambrose. Does he write the invitations?
Yes. Do you not know how to work it?
I tried, but I think I did something wrong.
Oh, no. Well, put it in the tray.
Put what in the?
Oh, did you? Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe you didn't see. You see the little music stand tray over there.
Yes.
Place whatever you want to copy in that.
Oh. Now look at Updraft had the invitation last, so
Yeah. Go put that in there.
Yeah, pop it in, and you see it pushes the paper on the desk off to the side and actually lifts the desk up a little bit and pulls out a blank invitation. It matches the paper perfectly. And then it begins to scribble one out for William Buchanan. And then kind of does a lot of flourishes and stuff, but there you go. You now have an invitation for William Buchanan.
Pick it up. Hand the original to whoever is standing closest to me. In my head, it's Ursine.
Yeah.
So hand the original out of the tray to Ursine.
And I'll do the same, put it in the tray.
And it gets you a copy of the invitation as well with your name on it.
and repeat.
Okay. When Agent Unicorn puts hers on, it kind of ticks its head to the side a little, and you see when it pulls up the desk, it pulls out two invitations, and it places them side by side and fills out first one, then the other. And you see you have an invitation for Lisa Stevens and one for George Earl Lawrence.
Interesting. I will pick them both up. Do you guys know this George guy? Is he supposed to be with us? Is that going to be a sanity check on that? For getting two? Or like... it just
I
strike
mean,
me as
I
odd,
think I don't think I don't think you know enough about it. It's
Okay.
odd.
Who's George?
He was a man I met in Idaho.
Why would he give
That-
me his invitation?
Do you remember Idaho, Unicorn?
No.
I don't think Unicorn
I don't-
wasn't in Idaho.
wasn't- I've
I
never been
was.
to Idaho.
Unicorn was in Idaho. Unicorn attended a meeting. We were all in Idaho.
Would I remember that
because
meeting?
We went there.
I
Vaguely.
remember Idaho.
Vaguely.
Yeah,
Would
vaguely.
I have known
you,
I was in Idaho though? That's the key to
No,
the question.
no.
Yeah, no.
no.
Yeah, I didn't think
You,
so.
yeah, you were scouring the tunnels and you met someone that brought you there. Kind of a big guy. He never got his name, but he brought you there, and then you just went once, then you went back to the tunnels.
Yeah, a meeting. I do remember a meeting. Was that in Idaho? I don't remember
Yep.
seeing you there though.
George and I were observing the meeting.
Oh, you were the two cloaked and we couldn't
No.
see your.
We were not in the meeting. Real quick,
Were you not?
I'm
you-
correct in remembering this that we
Yeah.
saw a unicorn while we were surveilling from the outside.
Actually, I think she was in the first one that you were actually
Oh,
at.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
it was
Because
the
you did
first one.
survey one later. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Then yeah.
You're thinking of the library, and I'm thinking of the first one where
Yeah, at the
I told
VA,
the story about getting eaten by the paper tiger.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
And I had left. Unicorn left before. Updraft unveiled and left.
Correct.
Yeah. So we'll just kind of have that little conversation about. I was there. I saw you.
I don't remember
George.
seeing you.
Was the man with me?
Huh.
George was a nice man.
Well, what happened to him? Did he just go on his own?
Got a real bad case of getting shot in the face.
And at that, I'm going to pull out the bottle.
Yeah. And you can see George Earl Lawrence on a
Oh.
beautiful bottle.
Well, then I presume this is for George. And I will hand the invitation to Ursine since she's carrying the bottle. We want to make sure everyone's admitted.
Trying to dodge that sand roll. Worked out perfect.
I would say this is definitely odd. I'm not sure it's to the level of sanity,
Yeah.
but if you're feeling it, go follow your heart. But
No, that makes sense.
Nah, it's
Never
confusing,
question
but I don't
somebody
think it's...
wants to roll sand on Delta Green.
yeah. And I will note, as you're having this conversation about, was either the scribe is back to just merrily writing away your words back and forth.
I'm going to watch the scribe, right? And I'm going to think instructions to the other two.
Go ahead and roll sanity.
Okay. And the instructions that I'm thinking I'll share after I fail this. 94.
94. Nice. You hear the words in your head.
Mhm.
And go ahead and do a sanity roll. What do you think at them, Agent Updraft?
I'm thinking at them. We need to continue. We need to go. Is what I'm thinking at them. I want to see if this automaton is able to reproduce that.
Yep. And as it's writing, you see the quill cracks a little bit as it's going through the name, and ink starts to spill. And you can see it writes, "We have to go." But the quill is actually kind of bleeding onto the paper at this point.
So it is writing it.
Yep.
But it's just having issues.
Yeah. And you're like kind of watching it as you lean over. It looks like it's trying to write, but the quill nub is broken and it's just scratching into the paper at this point and starting to rip it.
Perfect.
Is Ambrose still with us?
Yeah, he's back by the orrery. Just kind of, he's doing like the little bit to the window, like ha ha, wipe, ha ha.
Is there anything else in this room other than the automaton, the desk, and the? what
Yeah,
it's doing?
there are some doors out. I should have mentioned that. It looks like they go further into the gallery. If you were to start to head there, Ambrose would chime in something, but you can see this looks like quite a big building.
Yeah, if we go through one of the doors, we'll be in a crossover Impossible Landscapes bestow game, so we don't want to do that.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Um,
Don't ask me about that room.
you
It's a
said we
pain in
could,
the ass to make.
you said unless we do something crazy. No. Hearing the, I'm supposed, do we hear the thoughts?
Yeah. And like I said, make a sanity roll, the two of you.
Okay. Oh, that's a critical fail. 99. Doesn't get
Yeah.
much worse than that.
That's a fail.
Roll a d4 or just take 4.
I'll chance a breaking point on a roll. Because I'm too away from a breaking point. So.
Is Updraft wearing the mask at this point, like prematurely? Okay, yeah. Yeah.
I just hit a breaking point.
You are my wisdom. You are Updraft's unwavering wisdom and curiosity.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Who's this Tyler Durden fella?
His name is Robert Paulson.
That's the next bottle you're gonna find.
Paulson, yeah. Yeah, so that's Unicorn's gonna hear it and just look at Updraft and kind of nod like, yeah, I like as if I knew it all along. You were just a voice in my head. And that connection is then like, yes, we're one now. I can hear you. I can know you. And we'll go from that with that. And it's just I'm gonna fall in line. Like this whole time I've been following Updraft, doing what he says and trusting him. But now it becomes self-aware that we've always been one anyway. And that my death was just a part of him dying that he no longer needed in the moment. And so it's that realization of like, and resolve that this is who I am now. And so I'm just going to fall in line with Agent Updraft, the king. So less of a scary weirding out breaking point and more of a realization breaking point.
And how's Ursine feel about this on the other side of
This is concerning, but not necessarily surprising. So I'm like, but then the feeling of this is just how it's going to be sets in. Like, oh yeah, this is fated.
Yep. This is the new fresh hell. Great. All right. And I guess Ambrose is kind of looking at you. So,
Do you want another trip?
To the palace.
To the
Oh,
party.
Do we have
You go-
somewhere else we need to go?
Well, it's up to you. You certainly can. I mean,
Do we have-
the party is about to start, but there's always time.
And I'll just think
Always
to
starting.
myself, in hopes that Updraft can now read my thought, because we're one now. That I wonder if his contraption goes anywhere away from Athel. can travel to different places besides this existence. Just
Yeah,
gonna
roll.
huh.
Yeah, roll sand. Roll sand.
Yeah. Come here, dice. This is getting harder and harder, you know. Oh, that's a fail.
Or easier.
It's or
Yeah.
easier, yeah.
Yeah, actually, yeah, it is. Is Updraft? You kind of hear wondering. Go ahead and roll sanity too.
That's a fail.
Yeah, take a D4 as well as you're
Yeah.
scrabbling closer and closer to insanity as these messages are passing.
We have cumulative sanity now, though. That's
Yeah.
that's my working theory.
Yeah.
You just got a whole lot more sane, right?
I'm just gonna take all his sanity and thank you.
That's how I'm gonna die again.
Yeah.
All right,
Actually, that
so,
would actually be a cool mechanic after that breaking point that we share sand losses.
Sure, why not?
I mean,
We're near the end.
we mutually developed ESP, and so now we share.
Yeah,
our
we share
sanity
the sanity losses.
If we combined our sanities, we would still have less than Ursine.
We would still have less than I started with.
I think
Yeah.
we would still have less than half of what Ursine is sitting at right now.
You'd be surprised. I have lost a lot of sand in this
Tonight.
session. I have actually lost over 17 points of sanity this session.
It's amateur numbers.
It's
Mhm.
getting, the closer you get, it feels like the worse it gets.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you tell him and there's nothing else you want to do, he's happy to load you all up.
And I'll look at Updraft and Unicorn. Is there something else we're supposed to do here that I'm missing?
I think we have everything we need.
All right. Yes, you have your invitations. You have your costumes. I think you're as prepared as you can be for the party. Although I can't skip you in line, I'm afraid.
What
Oh,
do you mean,
that's-
skip us in line?
But there's a line for the party.
There's no line for kings.
I should have known. There's always a line.
It's not that bad. You'll get in.
Of course we will, because we're with the king.
Plus, what kind of party would it be without a line, right? I mean, I'm not going. I don't go to the parties. I'm content with where I am. Oh, thank you.
Well,
We'll see about that line.
Of course,
We'll see
there's
about
a
the
line.
Well, buckle up.
can is there room in there for one more? A frail old lady that's still bleeding out, and
Oh, I'm very sorry. I wish I could, my dear, but it is a very delicate situation inside here. There's simply no room.
I promise I won't tug on any levers.
Good luck on the tiger once more. Might I suggest, it appears that the lady had better luck. Maybe you could buckle up on the bear as well.
Yes, perhaps.
The bear's mine. Go get your own.
Is there another bear?
Ah, well, it's a little wobbly, but yes.
Okay. I'll take my chances on the tiger as opposed to the wobbly bear.
All right.
Ride the tiger.
Everybody, I think so Agent Unicorn, you lost all 4 from this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Last time. Everybody
Yes.
that didn't do that, go ahead and roll sanity one more time as this thing spins to life around you in this building. Yeah, and you're seeing, like, you almost catch little glimpses of the room snapping back as you exit it.
Fail.
Yes. Fail,
D4.
fail. D4, yep. But if you failed before, take off. It's a maximum of 4 you can lose from this.
Okay, so
Yep.
I still didn't lose that.
Yep, yep.
I had a 1 and a 2.
Nice. And this time, Agent Unicorn, you've got this tiger writing down pretty well as
Yeah.
the 3 of you appear in a misty area of the palace outskirts. You can see ahead of you there are people in line, a queue of just drunk, lavishly dressed people chatting amongst themselves. They're all wearing full costume and the masks. But your appearance does not appear to be noticed among the group. It is not commented on. Does not appear that anyone notices, as both Updraft and Ursine are having a very bad time after this.
Oh, it'll pass in a few minutes. Just give it a moment. It'll pass.
I feel so dizzy. Oh,
Give it a moment, dear. It'll be okay.
there's a reason I don't ride roller coasters.
I'm gonna walk up to just the end of the line and kind of to the side of it though, and look at whoever's standing there and just, well, hello, good evening. Thanks for coming to the party.
And you see at the back of the line there is a couple of large fat men. One of them is wearing a pretty ridiculous gray and gold costume with a walrus mask. And yeah, the other one has a it doesn't say what kind of mask he has, so he's got a seal mask. It's a walrus and a seal, and he's got a little flute there, and he reeks of wine. And in fact, as you see, he takes the lute, takes a little swig from it. Looks like there might be a bottle in there. Agent Ursine, you, as you're kind of collecting yourself and look up, something about that man seems very familiar, and you realize as he kind of lifts his mask to take a look at the two of you, it's Emmett Mosby.
Mosby.
Yes. Hello. Hi.
Do you remember me? And I'll like lift my mask up just a little bit.
I'm afraid not.
You recruited me into the program. 1993.
1993. I don't think so. I've been
Maybe
here
that-
for quite a while.
Maybe that happened after this for you. I was supposed to run into you here. Maybe I tell you that you're supposed to recruit me in 1993. That's how I got stuck in here. Now I understand. I understand how this happened.
Yeah, and you're starting to kind of say this a little aggressively and mention it, and now talking Delta Green, and he kind of gets a strange look of fear and concern and sadness passing his eyes, and he kind of shakes it off. I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about. Why are you bothering me? Please, we're trying to have a good time. I don't need this. Can we just wait in line? I mean, yes, there's 100 people ahead of us, but it's not that long. I'm sure if we just wait a little bit, we'll get in fine.
Did you translate the play? Was that you?
I remember I don't and he's starting kind of a flop sweat. I don't no, I don't think so. I'm sorry. I've had a little bit to drink. It's been a long time.
Why are you here?
I'm going to the party. We're always going to the party. We're just waiting to get in.
Well, it's destiny. This is how it's supposed to be.
No.
And he actually, he hears that pretty bleak thing to say, but he kind of brightens up. Yes, 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 exactly.
The only way out is through.
That's kind of catchy. I kind of like that.
I can't take credit for that one.
And I'll apologize for my friends. So I'm sorry, sir, for my friend's outburst. But we'll see you inside. Thank you again, and I will step up to the next pair of people in line on the outside.
Yeah.
And just
And you're-
good evening, welcome. Thank you for coming to the party. Kind of introducing
And-
along the way.
Yeah. And these two kind of turn jaundiced eyes towards you. They look like they're starving. They look horrible. And they kind of rasp at you.
No cutting. No cutting in line.
I'm just saying.
We'll
hello.
call the guards. We'll call the guards. Don't think we won't.
They're jaundicey looking, a bit malnourished.
Updraft
Yeah.
is not putting up with that bullshit. As soon as they say they start on their no cutting, and them looking weak as shit, and him still holding this sledgehammer, he just
Yeah.
shoves them out of the way, and just says, "Make way for your liege," and then continues to walk directly toward the front of the line, just like leaving a wake. Anyone who doesn't move will be moved.
And I will fall in right
And
behind
anyone
him.
who fights back can eat a hammer.
and I will start heralding. Make way for the king. Make way for his liege. I will just start heralding behind him.
Ain't nobody gonna tell me I'm gonna wait in line in my own goddamn party.
Yep. And there is almost immediately kind of like the boo! Ah! Traitors! Traitors! In service of the false king! Get the no! They can't cut in line!
I
And-
turn and look at them dead in the face. It's you dare call me the false king? The false king is the one who perpetuates all of this. He perpetuates your endless waiting. He keeps you here suffering so that he can be void and absent of his duties. That is no king. And you are traitors for following him. And turns around and just and looks over at Unicorn and says, "Take note of who they were." And then continues walking to the front of the line.
Roll a persuade.
Okay.
And do it at a +20. That's pretty
I
good.
didn't need it. I didn't need it. That was a 32 on a 50. Plus 20 would make it a 70.
And this guy is, you're not sure he's convinced, but he's flabbergasted at the sheer gall of such a statement. And you're passing by people, and there's more kerfuffle, but people heard this. And you are
Good.
able to, between the three of you, you kind of push past this line, and
Excellent.
you get to the front. You see there are a couple of these golden lion faced guards. They have masks that look like that. They look like they're ready for really anything. You see they each have the same kind of rifles that Agent Ursine kind of came to with. And they stop you at the front of the line, and they look back. Do any of you look back?
They look back behind us?
Yes, they look back behind you.
No. I give
No.
a shit.
I'm not gonna look back. I'm actually gonna stare at them. And I will kind of step to the side, but not ahead of, but to the flank of Updraft, and say, "Do you not recognize your king? You should kneel before your king." Hey, we're in this.
I'm, and they lean down. I'm afraid. Actually, Ursine, I got it. We didn't get you. Are you looking back?
No, I'm not looking back, but I'm also standing away from the two of them just a little bit. Like, I'm waiting to see what's going to happen here. But I'm also not looking back because I'm worried if I do that it's going to cause some shit.
The show's in front, obviously.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you are hearing a little murmuring in the back. Sounds like towards the end of the line, and you see the guard kind of takes a look at Agent Updraft and kind of gives a chuckle behind their lion mask. That's fine, sure. Do you have your invitations, my liege?
I hand him the invitation.
I'm afraid you must leave your weapons outside. They will be taken and stored, of course.
Yeah, I hand him that person, the person talking. I hand them my sledgehammer as I walk by.
Roll a stealth.
Check. It was a 42 on a 52.
He rolled a 53 on a 55. So he puts a hand to stop you, and there's a few of them around. You can see as you're getting up there, and he's like, "Please, my liege, if you don't mind the." He kind of taps you on the chest. You can feel he's tapping on the tomahawk.
Now, I distinctly remember that tomahawk having a pipe on the end of it, and I'm just gonna look him. I'm pretty sure. Unless
It was a traditional.
I don't
by the
think
description.
it had a pipe. Yeah, it was just a
okay.
traditional.
Never mind. I
Pipe,
thought it had
yeah.
a pipe on it for some reason. Maybe
don't
I was high.
Think so. Yeah, could be wrong.
Could have been actually high thinking
But-
about it.
He's tapping it. I can see that. I'm sorry. You will get it back.
I'll
We
hand
will
it back
take
to him.
very good
I
care. Oh, of course.
I won't.
Excellent. Thank you.
I have
Oh.
all of you.
Yes.
And then walks right by.
Yep.
Very good. Ladies.
I'll hand them my rifle. I am not going to hand them my handgun.
Make a stealth if you. Oh my
And this is
God.
partially because, yeah.
Roll very good.
Nope.
Nope.
Nope. That's a 41.
Hard no.
Yeah, he got a 50 out of 55 in full transparency. So these guys roll better than I have in my life. And so he goes, ma'am, it appears you have forgotten your.
Oh, yeah,
pistol.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And I'll pull it out and hand it to him.
Yes, of course. It is no problem. And you, the tiger-faced woman.
Oh yes. I will hand over the pistol. Yet I do still have a hand grenade in my cookie tin.
All right.
So
Roll
I'm gonna
that stealth.
which is not real good, but I'm gonna try. No, that is not a pass. So obviously I'm nervously holding my cookie tin. I'm just here to bring the cookies.
And
Nothing
you hear
behind
it.
a little clatter. I'm sorry. I must search the tin. It is the law, you understand.
Oh God.
And he's gets the tin, and he doesn't seem in any of these like he's worried. He just kind of takes it and
Okay.
hands it off to another guard. They're just passing it back to another cubby kind of off to the side of the entrance.
Everybody tries to sneak weapons into the party. It's fine.
I'm sure they do. Yeah.
And as you are, I guess, are the two of you entering as well?
Oh, absolutely. Following right behind.
Very
Yep.
good. You are entering the party as you hear some shouting behind you about how dare you stop me from entering. Don't you know your king? And you recognize Updraft's voice from back there giving his speech at the end of the line, but faint, like at a distance.
Hmm.
As you enter the Grand Palace, and I think that is where we will end for the night, with you entering the final party, the masquerade.
Ooh, entering the masquerade. Fun stuff. All right.
So glad I didn't look back.
Yeah, that would have been a sand check for sure.
yeah.
I don't even think you could pass that like anyway.
No, probably not.
I was just imagining the Spider-Man meme.
Yeah. Wait a second.
Like Updraft would be like, what?
What?
And then, you have two guys with sledgehammers fighting to the death.
So
Well, that sounds better than anything I had planned for next scenario. So
I had to check my character sheet just to make sure I did not have anything in demolitions, because had I had even 5 in demolitions, I would have rigged that cookie tin to pull the pin on the hand grenade when it opened 30 meters. But I didn't have anything. I'd never put anything in demolitions. I had planned to, I just never did. So
splatter.
that would have been hilarious. Anyway, so what are we thinking? Next week is the
That is
finale?
it. This is the last. So I will tell you ahead of time, because this is how it will go. Is after you enter the party, we'll do a quick description of it. I am then going to start a timer for an hour. I will pause it as we reach the end of a particular agent's story. There's obviously many ways that can go, but there will be a variety of ends. And then once the hour is up, that is it. And we'll do any remaining epilogues of whoever makes it out through. If
back to the
maybe.
beginning, back to the hotel
Guess
Bravo and starting over.
guess we'll find out.
Guess we'll find out next week, everybody. Wednesday night, and that's gonna be what's the date for that? That's March
The
2nd.
second.
That's March
Yeah.
2nd. So if you're not in our Discord, make sure that you're over there so you see the announcement. Big important thing happening March 1st. So this will be a really awesome way to kick off that big thing on March 2nd as well. We'll celebrate all week long. Also, don't forget this week, Friday, we're adding a new stream to the schedule where we have a new Delta Green game kicking off. Believe that is being run by Agent Updraft himself. So hosting a game for the first time on the United Adventure Company Friday night. We're having a session 0.5.
0.51.
Yeah, something like that.
It'll get there.
We'll
It'll
get there. Yeah. So join us for that around 7 p.m. on Friday night Eastern time. Is that correct? I have the time right? 7 p.m. Eastern time on Friday. And then Saturday, join us for some Dungeons and Dragons with the Welcome Home campaign. And if you're not, yeah, lots of stuff, right? Diamond's excited. Whoop, whoop, more Delta Green. And then there's next week is Weird on Tuesday, Delta Green Wednesday, Friday. It's just going to be a perpetual cornucopia of fun and games. Everyone's excited. And as this game wraps up, we're looking at what might take its place as well pretty quick after. So I don't think there's going to be a long hiatus between these Wednesday nights. We're going to keep Wednesday night as a regular fixture on the channel. So make sure you're over at the Discord, tune in, see all the announcements, and get with us wherever we are, whenever we are. But anybody have anything? I want to say thanks to our Patreon supporters. That's Nathan and Aaron that have so graciously joined us on the Patreon. Thank you so much. We were already making more money on the United Adventure Company than we did last year. So thank you.
Some good news.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. And as Patreon supporters, make sure you, if you're on the Patreon, check your messages, because there's a clip from last night's Weird campaign. The finale of Newsom was last night, and So a new Weird campaign kicking off as well in a couple of weeks. That's going to be really exciting. That's back with RB, LK, myself, and a couple others for that game. A new module for Weird. So lots of stuff happening in the United Adventure Company, and we're super, super excited. Gina, you're playing? You're getting weird? Oh, I'm excited.
Nice.
Oh, yes. Awesome. I had not seen that. So welcome to the Weird. I'm excited for you. It's going to be awesome. If you're not familiar with Weird, click that link. Go over to charismakills.com. Figure everything out about Weird. That's WYRD. But until until the next time, folks, we're the United Adventure Company. Remember, deception is a right, truth is a privilege, and innocence, that's just a luxury. Until next time, folks, stay out of our dungeons. Good night, everybody.